where curiosity tucks itself in beside comfort, and even the busiest thoughts learn to exhale. Tonight, we'll take a gentle journey into something you've likely touched a dozen times today without even noticing. A tap on your screen, a message that floated across the globe, a quiet stream of data carrying this very voice to you right now. Strange, isn't it? You're listening to me, and I have no idea where or when you are. And yet, here we are, connected, through something invisible, something impossibly vast yet tucked into your pocket. Tonight, we're talking about the internet. Not the noisy, flashy kind full of updates and ads and endless scrolling. No, tonight we're wondering, how does it work? And maybe more softly, how are we all woven together by it? The internet, this unseen web, has become the nervous system of our lives. But what is it really? Is it wires? Is it signals? Is it magic? Maybe just a bit of all three. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? A city wrapped in evening light, a countryside where the stars hum quietly above. And how are you feeling in this moment of stillness between tabs and timelines? If this exploration soothes your thoughts or simply gives them something gentle to hold, I'd be ever so grateful if you gave this video a like or even subscribed. It helps this little corner of calm find others drifting through their own digital waves. But now, I invite you to ease into stillness. Let your eyes rest, your breathing slow, and let's begin. Because somewhere behind the buzz of routers and the quiet blinking of modems lies a story of light, language, and the curious ways we reach across the world just to say, I'm here. It's a curious thing, isn't it? How normal it feels now to press a button and send a message across the planet. A photo, a laugh, a tiny dot on a map that says, I'm on my way. And the reply returns, almost instantly, as if the world had no width at all. You pause a moment, check the signal, and somewhere oceans away, someone else feels a little closer. The distance shrinks. The silence fills with words. And yet, most of the time, we don't really think about it. Not the cables under the sea, not the signals dancing invisibly through the air, not the mathematics humming softly behind our screens. It all just works. You open your phone, you scroll, you watch, you send. But what's really happening in those quiet clicks? When we think of the internet, we often picture websites and videos, maybe social media feeds or news headlines drifting past like clouds. But those are just shadows, projections on a wall. The internet itself, the real thing, is invisible, buried, blinking, pulsing with purpose beneath our daily lives. And somehow it's also deeply emotional. It connects not just machines, but people. It's how we reach out when we miss someone, how we share news, make plans, laugh at cats in outer space. It's how we remember, learn, argue, reconnect. The internet feels fast, almost instant, and yet the feelings it stirs can be timeless. The warmth of a message from someone far away. The soft ache of seeing an old photo. The rush of being seen, or the sting of being ignored. Sometimes we think we're just checking our notifications, but really we're asking, am I still part of something? That's the human layer, the one that turns zeros and ones into relationships and meaning. We don't just use the internet, we feel it. And in that sense, it isn't just a tool, it's a mirror. Have you ever noticed how it shapes your sense of time? You open one tab, and suddenly it's 2 hours later. You meant to send a quick email, and now you're watching a documentary about jellyfish migration in Portuguese with auto-generated subtitles. It's as if the internet folds time in strange, slippery ways. And space, too. Think of a video call. You and someone else, thousands of miles apart, but looking into each other's eyes as if you're across a small kitchen table. There's a strange kind of closeness in those glowing rectangles, as if the screen itself were a window, and the distance just melted quietly into background noise, The internet collapses geography, it stretches memory, it multiplies meaning, and sometimes it overwhelms. So many voices, so many stories, so many choices stacked on top of each other like mismatched puzzle pieces. Ever scroll until you feel full? Not satisfied, just filled to the brim with other people's ideas, faces, opinions, dreams. That's not just digital fatigue. That's emotional proximity at scale. The internet connects us, yes, but it also crowds us. And in that noise, we sometimes forget that the connection is real. Not metaphorical, not symbolic, real. Physical photons racing through fiber optics, magnetic waves leaping from towers to your phone, electric pulses bouncing from satellites to sea cables and back again. Your message isn't just floating in the air, it's travelling, and fast. A whisper becomes a beam of light. A thought becomes an electrical signal, crosses an ocean, and lands, gently, impossibly, on someone else's screen. That's the wonder we rarely pause for. We live in an age where a grandmother in Nairobi can send a recipe to her grandson in Toronto in less time than it takes to tie a shoelace. Where a doctor in Sweden can consult with a nurse in rural Vietnam as if they were in the same hallway. Where someone who feels deeply alone can find a forum of people who say, "You too, me too." There's something quiet and magical in that. A hum beneath the hustle. A web that holds more than data. It holds our stories. But here's the paradox. The more connected we become, the more invisible that connection feels. We tap and swipe and speak to the cloud without seeing the sky it floats in. And in doing so, we sometimes take it all for granted, as if it's always been this way, as if connection were a given, not a marvel. That's why tonight we'll pause the scroll, just for a while, to pull back the curtain, not to reveal anything alarming, but to admire the complexity of the machine we all live inside. We'll trace the lines of light, the cables under oceans, the protocols that agree on how to say hello. We'll peek into servers that never sleep, into routers that decide how best to send your selfie to the other side of the planet. But not too quickly. This isn't a lecture, it's a lullaby for the curious. Because understanding something doesn't make it less mysterious. Sometimes it makes it even more so. So if you've ever wondered why a call can drop while the video still streams, or how your phone knows you've moved to the kitchen, or how a meme born in Korea ends up on your aunt's Facebook page by morning, you're in the right place. The internet isn't just a net, it's a living, breathing maze of machines and agreements and glowing wires, and every click, every scroll, every smile it brings to your face. That's not noise, that's a signal, and you're part of it. So let's take a closer look. Not to solve it all, but to marvel at the way invisible things can hold us together, at how a flicker of light in one corner of the world can land in your lap like a quiet message. You're not alone. Long before routers blinked or signals pulsed through the air, we were already looking for ways to reach across the quiet spaces between us. Connection isn't new, only the speed has changed. Before the internet was a word, there were strings and signs, whispers and watchfires, drums and pigeons and paper sealed with wax. The desire to connect, to send a thought where the body could not follow, has been with us since the very beginning. It's as old as fire, maybe older. Once we etched symbols into stone. Later we stitched messages onto cloth, folded them into the seams of coats, tucked them inside hollow reeds to float downstream. Every culture has its stories of invisible connection, lines that tie the soul to the stars, threads that bind loved ones across lifetimes, words whispered to the wind in hopes they'll land where they're needed. The ancient Greeks believed in daimones, not demons as we use the word now, but invisible messengers, spirits who darted between people like cosmic couriers, delivering thoughts and moods and inklings, a sort of spiritual postal service. The Norse imagined a tree, Yggdrasil, spanning all realms, its branches connecting gods, humans, giants, and the dead. In Hindu thought, there is Akasha, the ether or sky. the subtle space that carries vibration and meaning. A realm not seen but deeply felt. Even in language, these metaphors linger. The Chinese character for relationship, guanxi, literally links the ideas of connection and tie. In Arabic, sila means bond, connection, but also carries the sense of family, of blood. In Quechua, the language of the Andes, relationships are not between two individuals but within a web of community, always threaded. You see, humans have always dreamed of webs, even before they had machines to build them. Centuries before the first packet of data zipped from one computer to another, the idea was already seeded in myth and poetry. Consider the spider, long a sacred symbol in cultures across the world. The West African stories of Anansi, the clever spider who spins stories and tricks kings, passed from mouth to ear through generations. In Native American lore, the spider woman sits at the center of the world, weaving strands that connect all living things. In Japan, Jorogumo is a spirit who takes the shape of a woman and weaves illusions. A different kind of connection, perhaps, but one still born in the realm of threads. Even the word web carries a certain quiet reverence, doesn't it? It suggests something intricate, something delicate, something held together by tension and symmetry. And yet, we borrowed it to name one of the most complex creations in human history, the World Wide Web. Not a network, not a system, but a web. As if somewhere deep down we still understand that all things are held together by threads. Before we called it the internet, we had other networks, less digital, more dusty, caravans, couriers, post offices, telegraph poles reaching like skeletal fingers across a continent. The invention of the telegraph in the 19th century was a moment that bent time itself. For the first time in history, words could travel faster than the person speaking them. Morse code, the earliest of electric languages, tapped across wires in bursts and pauses, dots and dashes. It was as close to teleporting thought as we had ever come. You could stand in New York and send a message to London in minutes. That wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary, and not everyone was comfortable with it. The 1800s were filled with essays warning about the dangers of too much speed. There were worries about losing the art of letter writing, about relationships becoming too shallow, about minds becoming overstimulated by all the noise. Some things never change. Before the telegraph, messages travelled on horseback, on foot, by pigeon. In ancient Persia, relay stations were spaced across vast deserts. Riders would gallop from post to post, each handing off a message like runners in a cosmic relay race. The Inca built an empire on knots. Their quipu were bundles of coloured cords with knots arranged in specific patterns, an entire language of touch and texture. Historians now believe these may have conveyed not just numbers, but stories, laws, even census data. A woven database, an analogue cloud. In ancient Rome, signal towers lit flames to send warnings across long distances, fire jumping from hilltop to hilltop like a primitive version of Wi-Fi. In Africa, the talking drum echoed messages across jungles, the rhythm and tone carrying meaning farther than any shout could reach. All of these were internets, not the internet, but internets, systems for sending meaning from one mind to another without moving the body. The magic of the modern internet isn't that it connects us, it's how quietly, instantly, and universally it does so. But the longing it answers, that's ancient. Even in the 20th century, long before the World Wide Web, visionaries imagined a kind of global brain, a vast knowledge-sharing network. In the 1930s, Belgian bibliographer Paul Otley proposed something called the Mundaneum, a kind of mechanical search engine made of drawers and cards and operators. He called it a réseau mondial, a world network. Later, science fiction would take up the torch. Writers like Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, and William Gibson spun tales of cyberspace and satellites and global consciousness long before servers and search bars made them real. It's worth noting that even today we use spiritual language when talking about digital space. We send thoughts, we reach out, we share energy, go viral, sync, stream. We upload to the cloud, as if the sky were holding our secrets in a vast library of mist. We call it the web, we surf its waves, we get lost in its pages, and sometimes when it goes quiet we feel that ache, that silence, like a sudden loneliness, as if something invisible and vital has been unplugged. Even now, in the age of satellites and 5G, we still build shrines to connection. We still light up icons in the corner of our screens and feel something settle when the bars are full. Not because of bandwidth or speed, but because those tiny symbols tell us you're connected. To what exactly? That's harder to say, but it matters. We know it does. In Japan, there's a word, tsundoku. It refers to the gentle guilt of unread books. I wonder if there should be a word for all the unsent messages in our drafts folder, the tabs we meant to open, the quiet corners of the internet where we once found someone who understood us and never went back. In the end, the internet isn't just the history of technology, it's a history of yearning for faster messages, for clearer signals, for wider circles of belonging. And like all great human inventions, it carries both light and shadow. It connects, and it isolates. It liberates, and it overwhelms. It gives voice to the voiceless, and sometimes too many voices at once. But the story of how we got here, how wires replaced whispers and code replaced quipu, that's a story of breathtaking ambition, of humans trying to outwit distance, to make thought fly, to turn silence into signal. And even now, even with all our fiber optics and algorithms and AI, that core instinct remains the same as it ever was. To say, I see you, I hear you, I'm here. Even if the person on the other side is just a glowing dot, blinking steadily from another time zone. So how does it all actually work? The message, the meme, the video of the otter holding hands. How does something digital begin here and arrive there? Let's trace the path together, slowly, as if we were following footprints across snow. It begins, oddly enough, with a decision, a click, a tap, a press of send, something small and human, a wish, a question, a wave. That action starts a ripple, a cascade of digital events that travel farther and faster than any single neuron in your brain. But even before we send, there's something we need to understand. The internet at its core is not a place. It's not in the cloud or on your screen. It's not made of light or code or cat videos. It's made of connections, physical ones, invisible ones, agreed upon ones, wires, switches, servers, languages, protocols, addresses, a whole civilization beneath your fingertips. If you lifted the surface of the world like a tablecloth, you'd see it underneath, strands of fibre, coils of copper, towers stretching skyward like mechanical trees. The internet lives inside them, not in the way a ghost lives in a house, but in the way electricity lives in a circuit. So let's slow down and begin with the first layer. It's a little surprising, perhaps, that this thing we call the internet begins with something as old-fashioned as a cable, but most of it does. Not satellites, not magic, mostly cables. Coaxial cables, copper lines, and increasingly, fiber optic cables, which carry pulses of light instead of electricity. Some run along telephone poles, others are buried under streets. But the ones that matter most, the ones that connect continents, lie sleeping under the ocean. There are more than 400 submarine cables crisscrossing the sea floor, stretching over 1.3 million kilometres, or enough to circle the Earth more than 30 times, thin as a garden hose, fragile as a memory. And yet they carry more than 95% of all international internet traffic, text messages, emails, bank transfers, lullabies, all travelling through glass threads thinner than a human hair. Inside each fibre, information moves at the speed of light, Well, almost. About 2/3 the speed of light in a vacuum, which is still fast enough to get a message from London to New York in less than a blink. This is how the internet breathes. Through pulses of light flickering down dark tunnels. Your message, once a simple sentence, is now a pattern. A burst of brightness, like Morse code rewritten for lasers. Light on, light off, millions of flickers every second. If we were to watch it, it would be beautiful. Like lightning bottled, like thought made visible. But the cables alone are not enough. Light needs direction, so we add the next layer. You know where you want your message to go, but your computer doesn't, so it asks. Quietly, behind the scenes, every device connected to the internet is given an IP address, short for Internet Protocol. It's like a digital mailing label, a set of numbers that tells routers and servers, this belongs to me. IPv4 addresses are the older format, like 192.168.1.1. IPv6 addresses are newer and longer, like 2001.db8 or 85A3. Just a certain BUI 0370.34. You don't have to memorize them, but machines do. So when you type in a website, say www.sleepyotters.net, your device sends a request to something called the DNS, or Domain Name System. Think of the DNS as the internet's phone book. It takes friendly names like sleepyotters.net and finds the corresponding IP address, which is where that site actually lives. But then, how do we get there? Well, once your message has its destination, it doesn't travel in a straight line. That would be too easy and far too vulnerable. Instead, the message is broken into smaller packets. Imagine slicing a letter into tiny numbered scraps and sending each one by a different route. Some go through Paris, some through Dublin, some hop to Iceland and bounce down to Montreal. Every packet takes the most efficient path available at that moment. This is called packet switching. It's one of the core principles of the internet. It's a bit like air traffic control, but faster, and for photons. Routers, those blinking, humming machines in your house, your neighborhood, your city, decide where each packet goes next. They're like the internet's postmasters, redirecting billions of messages every second. Each packet carries not just content but instructions, like, I'm packet 6 of 12. Please reassemble me with the others when you arrive. And arrive they do, most of the time, within milliseconds. Even if one packet is delayed or lost, the system knows how to ask for a resend. It's resilient, flexible, adaptive. And that's not the only brilliance behind it. Underneath all this chaos is something surprisingly orderly. Protocols. A protocol is simply an agreement, a set of rules machines follow to make communication possible. The most important is TCP/IP, Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol. You don't need to remember the name, only what it means. TCP ensures that packets are sent, received, and reassembled correctly. IP handles where they go. Together they're like a postal system and a translator rolled into one. There are others. HTTP, for example, is how websites are delivered. SMTP sends email. FTP moves files. Each one is a language, a handshake, a rhythm, and just like in music, every note matters. But none of this works without the devices that speak those protocols, the machines that make up the internet's nervous system. You've probably heard of a server. It sounds a bit formal, but really, it's just a computer that listens. It waits quietly in a room, sometimes underground, sometimes cooled by the Arctic air, sometimes guarded in vast warehouse farms. You ask it for something, a web page, a photo, a podcast, and it serves it to you. Hence, server. Your device, the phone, laptop, tablet, is the client. It makes requests. It says, please show me this article. Please stream this video. Please deliver this cat in a shark costume riding a Roomba, the server replies. It says, of course, here it is, and sends packets of data back to your device. Every website you visit, every app you use, every video you watch, these are just requests and responses, a gentle back and forth, like a long-distance conversation spoken in electric pulses. But not all servers are equal. Some serve millions, some just a handful. Google's servers span continents. Tiny personal blogs may live on shared machines, whispering softly through the noise. Some content is cached, temporarily stored closer to you so that it loads faster, like a librarian who already knows what book you're about to ask for and has it ready on the desk. Others are streamed, sent piece by piece in real time, like a story told live across the wires. And behind all of this, beating quietly like a heart, is something invisible but essential. None of this would work if the clocks were off. Not just literal clocks, though time synchronization is important too, but logical clocks. The idea that all these scattered machines, across oceans and continents, must agree on what comes first, what comes next, and when to ask again. Synchronization allows for order. It keeps your messages in line. It makes conversations coherent. Even in chaos, there's choreography. So far, we've followed a message from your fingertips through fiber, addresses, and invisible rules. But there's still more to this quiet journey, because moving information is one thing, protecting it is another. Imagine sending a love letter through a very public post office, one where anyone, technically, could open it, copy it, or change the words before it arrived. Now imagine that same letter, sealed in an envelope made of math, an envelope that only the intended reader can open. That's what encryption does. Encryption turns your message, be it a photo, a password, or a grocery order, into gibberish for anyone who tries to intercept it. Only someone with the right key can turn that gibberish back into meaning. The most common form of this today is TLS, or Transport Layer Security. When you see a little padlock next to a website URL, that's TLS at work, whispering, this conversation is private. And behind it, even more math. Algorithms like RSA and AES, prime numbers doing a delicate dance. It's strange to think that some of the most powerful protections in the world come not from vaults or passwords, but from the quiet elegance of number theory. So when your device connects to your bank, or to a friend across the sea, it's not just sending and receiving, it's negotiating, it's verifying, it's saying, are you really who you say you are? And waiting for a cryptographic handshake in reply. And all of this happens in a blink. But of course, not everything travels by wire. Let's step gently now into the air. Wi-Fi, 4G, Bluetooth, satellite. These are the threads of the internet we can't see at all, even if we walk straight through them. You're probably surrounded by these signals right now. They pass through walls, floors, your body. They don't hurt you. They're not watching you. They're simply waiting. Waiting for the right device to listen. Wi-Fi signals are electromagnetic waves, cousins of visible light, but just a bit longer. They travel from your router to your phone, from your laptop to the local tower, bouncing gently between antennas. Unlike fiber optics, they don't need cables, but they do need coordination. Each signal travels on a frequency, measured in hertz. Too many signals in the same space can cause interference, like too many musicians trying to solo at once. So we give them lanes, protocols, timing. It's less a conversation than a carefully timed ballet of beeps and pauses, and when you step onto a plane or into an elevator and suddenly lose service, that's the dance floor shifting, the music pausing. Still, wireless communication allows us to walk freely within the net, to wander and remain tethered. Even satellites, orbiting far above our heads, beam internet to remote places, bouncing signals back to Earth like digital carrier pigeons in space. But for most of us, the signal lives closer, in our homes, our pockets, our palms. We don't always notice it. We just feel its absence when it's gone. You could break down the internet into wires and code and packets and pings, but somehow the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Because when you video call a friend, it doesn't feel like photons travelling through fibre. It feels like presence. When you read a stranger's blog post and feel less alone, It doesn't feel like data retrieved from a remote server farm in Sweden. It feels like empathy. And when you watch a silly, lovely video that makes you laugh so hard you cry, it doesn't feel like cached content streamed through layered protocols. It feels like joy. And so, perhaps the internet is best thought of not as a machine, but as a translation. A bridge between meaning and motion, between electricity and emotion, between a thought in one mind and a feeling in another. Because for all its code and cables, the internet is still used for something incredibly fragile: connection. Which brings us to the next chapter. If this is how it works, then why did we build it? And how did we go from stone tablets to satellite routers in just a few dozen generations? In the next part of our journey, we'll wander into the past again, not into myth, but into invention, to meet the people who dreamed a world of instant messages long before it was possible, to explore the sparks and switches that slowly gave birth to a global web. But not too fast. There's time. After all, the internet waits, and tonight, so do we. By now you've met the basics: wires and light, packets and pulses, a soft-spoken system that lets meaning fly invisibly across the world. But what lies deeper still? What keeps this network breathing, thinking, scaling? What makes it possible for billions of people to click and scroll and stream at the same time? Let's drift together a little farther down. Not to complicate, but to admire. At the heart of the internet are places you'll likely never see. Windowless buildings, cooled, secured, humming like deep-sea creatures asleep in the dark. These are data centers, the beating hearts of the digital world. Inside, rows upon rows of servers, stacked like books in a library no one reads with their eyes, store everything from emails to videos to entire websites. If you've ever watched a movie online, sent a photo, edited a document in the cloud, it likely passed through one of these quiet fortresses. Each server inside is a machine, but together they form something much stranger: an organism, self-monitoring, self-healing, always on. To keep them alive, data centers need several things: cooling to prevent overheating, power, constant and stable, security, both physical and digital, and redundancy, copies of everything so no single failure causes collapse. They're built to survive blackouts, earthquakes, cyber attacks, even human error. Some are nestled in cold climates to save on cooling costs. Others are built underwater or in repurposed missile silos or powered by volcanoes and tides. Oddly poetic, isn't it? That the warmth of our connection depends on such cool, clinical infrastructure. But even in these bunkers of blinking light, delays happen. And that brings us to latency is the quiet pause between question and answer. It's the delay between send and received, between tapping play and hearing sound. Usually measured in milliseconds, it's something we rarely notice, unless it grows too large. When latency rises, your video stutters, your call lags, your game glitches just enough to remind you you're not quite there. Several things can cause latency. Distance. Light is fast, but not instant. Sending a message from Sydney to São Paulo takes time, even at light speed. Congestion, like traffic, too many packets in one lane cause delays. Routing. Sometimes packets take strange paths, like flying from New York to Boston via Tokyo. Device load. Your own computer may be slow to respond, like someone just waking from a nap. Reducing latency is one of the great obsessions of modern networking. There are entire teams devoted to shaving milliseconds from your experience, because milliseconds matter. In finance, a 10 ms lead can mean millions. In video calls, it's the difference between natural rhythm and awkward overlap. In gaming, well, just ask anyone who's ever lagged during a boss fight. And yet, there's something oddly comforting in this chase, that we strive with such intensity to make distance feel like presence. Still, not everything on the internet is live. Some things wait for you, which brings us to, when you visit a website once, your browser remembers it. That's caching, the practice of temporarily storing content closer to you, so the next time you ask, it answers faster. Imagine you walk into a bakery every morning and order the same thing, a warm croissant. Eventually the baker just starts having it ready. That's caching. It happens at several levels. Browser cache. Your device stores images, scripts, styles. Server cache. The origin server stores versions of popular pages. Content delivery networks, CDNs. These are like outposts. Servers positioned around the globe that hold copies of content, so even if the original is far away, you get it from a neighbour. Netflix, YouTube, news sites, even sleepy science podcasts. All of them rely on caching to bring the faraway close. It's not just faster, it's also more efficient. Fewer redundant requests, less strain on the network, a quieter hum. Still, even the best cache is only as good as its update, which means the internet isn't static, it evolves. When a route becomes slow, it learns a better one. When a device goes offline, it reroutes. When a new standard emerges, it adapts. Slowly, yes, but surely. This adaptability is baked into its design. Take BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol. It's how large networks, called autonomous systems, communicate and share paths. Imagine a network of roads and BGP as the system of signs. It tells packets. If you want to get to Brazil, go this way. If that's blocked, try this detour. And if everything fails, just wait. It's complex, often opaque, sometimes fragile, and yet it's held the global internet together for decades. But adaptation isn't just about speed or routes, it's also about behaviour. Which brings us to one of the most curious pieces of the internet's evolution. Once, the internet was a map. Now it's more like a guide, not just showing you every road, but choosing a few and saying, these are the ones you might like. That's an algorithm at work. Algorithms are sets of rules, often mathematical, that sort, and prioritise content. They decide what shows up in your feed, what ads you see, which video starts playing next. Even what your search results display. They're not inherently bad or good, they're tools, but powerful ones, because they don't just reflect your behaviour, they shape it. Click one article and a dozen more appear. Watch one video and the rabbit hole deepens. Spend a few seconds more on a post and suddenly it's everywhere. Algorithms watch what you linger on, what you skip, what you click, what you close. Not in a sinister, spying sort of way, but in the way a river watches the stones it flows around and learns to curve. They personalise your experience, which feels convenient, comforting, familiar. But sometimes too much familiarity can become a mirror, an echo chamber, a feedback loop. You see what you already believe, you hear what you already expect, and without realising it, your world becomes smaller, while feeling endlessly large. So here's the quiet truth. The internet is vast, but it's also filtered, and the filters are invisible unless you look for them. Still, they serve a purpose, to manage the scale, to simplify choice, to protect attention, because out there in the full ocean of the internet there's too much to drink all at once. So the algorithm becomes a kind of cup, a ladle, a lighthouse, and occasionally a maze. And now we drift into stranger waters. You see, while most of the internet hums with the rhythm of everyday use, streams, messages, updates, there are places where that rhythm skips, places where it bends, cracks, or quietly breaks. And that too is part of the story. Sometimes things go wrong. Imagine you're sending a message to a friend. Everything should work. The address is correct, the connection strong, the moment perfect, and yet, nothing. The message vanishes into silence. What happened? It could be any number of things. A server misbehaving, a router misdirecting, a cable beneath the ocean accidentally severed by an anchor, drifting in deep salt water far from human sight. Sometimes, a misconfiguration in a distant country can ripple across the globe, slowing down services you've never heard of. That's the curious fragility of a system designed to be strong. Even its resilience has seams, And in those moments, when a website won't load or a video stutters endlessly, you're not just witnessing a technical glitch, you're watching something vast and global and very human stumble. But there's beauty in that too. It reminds us the internet isn't magic. It's made, maintained, constantly stitched together by engineers, protocols, and quiet choices. It can break, it can heal, and like us, it learns from both. Now and then, the system is pushed to its edges. During disasters, when cell towers collapse and cables melt under fire, the internet reroutes. It folds around the damage, like water around stone. In places where infrastructure is scarce, people build their own tiny networks, meshes of old routers and repurposed phones, whispering messages through the dust. In moments of protest or revolution, when regimes silence digital voices, the internet splinters, but it rarely disappears. Banned sites reappear in disguise. Connections leap through satellites, tunnels, proxies, anything that lets light slip through the cracks. There is defiance in that. Quiet,